So welcome back. Hopefully you've got your version control system all set up and working nicely. If that's out of your depth, then please just do a little bit of your own research and ask in the discussions, and I'm pretty confident that you can get SourceTree installed. Once you have it installed, or your favorite version control system, then pick up from there. So we're going to be talking about ignoring Unreal derived files. So in this video, I want to explain that derived files can be easily rebuilt. So derived files are things that the system uses to speed up, for example, the opening of Unreal or the playing of the game, but they could be rebuilt. Other files, like the code you write, your assets you create from scratch, your level layout, etc., they can't be easily rebuilt. That's the real value, that's the gold you're creating, and we don't want to lose that. So we want to ignore most derived files for the sake of version control. And the question is, which folders to ignore in version control? We basically don't want to add everything to version control. It will slow it down and it will make things complicated. If you exclude things automatically, certain folders, then everything will be faster, your databases will be smaller, you'll take up less disk space, and everything will just be a lot simpler. So we'll end up showing you our starting get-ignore file for Unreal and how we're going to configure that. And if you're using a different version control system, pretty much the same file should work. Okay, cool. So what are the derived folders in Unreal, and what does it even mean? Well, I'll come back to this slide in a moment. Let's just look at it. Here we are at the Unreal launcher. This may look a tiny bit different to yours because I think last time we looked at the Unreal, we were back at 4.10.1 or a lower version. But get yourself up to date. There's a button up here somewhere that'll let you update the version. You want to be on 4.10.2 or higher. And you'll also notice that I've got a vault down here with some things that I've been experimenting with. You can get these from the Marketplace and the Learn tabs. You can go ahead and get some of these projects if you wanted to. But otherwise, this should be pretty familiar. What we want to do is just launch the engine. So we're in the Epic Games launcher, launching for the first time in earnest the Unreal editor. And we're actually going to start setting up our folders and our everything now. And we'll get the version control issues sorted so that from now on we can start being grown-ups and using version control. So we're going to make a new project for this game. It's going to be a C++ basic code project with starter content. So C++ basic code with starter project content. Now, where am I going to store this guy? Inside my repos folder, sure. The interesting thing is in Unreal, you can't start with numbers. I actually want to start with a number. Project names can't begin with a number. They must begin with an alphanumeric character. So if I go over to my repos here, what I'm going to do is make a folder and call it 03 building escape, like that. And then back in Unreal, I'm going to point it to that directory, repos 03 building escape. And then inside that, I'm going to create a new one called building escape, I think. Okay, so everything's happy. So we'll get a subfolder, which is absolutely fine. So let's go ahead and create that folder now. Now, when it comes to version control, you are okay to either create a repository folder, which you can do in SourceTree, I'll show you in a moment, or just to create your game folder like this. It doesn't really matter which order you do that in yet. It will matter before you make your first, what we call commit, because we want to make sure we're ignoring the right things. And these get-ignore files that tell the system what to ignore only take account of new stuff, not stuff that's already being tracked. So that'll all come clear in a second. While this builds, let's take a look at what it's building. Here's our building escape. Here's the subfolder we made. Now, have a look at this subfolder. What I'm going to do is ignore Visual Studio for a minute. I'm actually going to go up a level, and I'm going to use tree size free to map what's being built. If you don't have tree size or a similar tool, then you can just take a look here for tree size and tree size here, Jam Software. Okay, that's an example of a tool. Let's take a look at it, tree size free. What has Unreal just built? Well, 1.4 gig of stuff, 734 megas in something called intermediate, 600 megas in content. Basically, all of that is the starter content we selected. And then it's got binaries and various other things. So we need to decide what we're going to be storing here and keeping track of and what we're not. All right, so let me show you a cool thing. Cool thing is, this is Unreal. It's done a load of building to increase the speed that it opens. I'm going to close it. Same applies to Visual Studio, by the way. If we actually build the project here in Visual Studio and go and look at our folders, you'll see here Visual Studio building escape.vc.db. You see that guy there? And that's also going to swell up and grow in size. And that's another one of these derived files. So if you were to do a Google search for Unreal directory structure, for example, to try and make sense of all this, what do we get? I'm going to give you the short answer, but I want to make sure you know where to go and get the detailed answer. The detailed answer is in the Unreal directory structure, and it will explain what all these folders do here, okay? I'm going to do my best to explain it for you now. What you need to know at this stage is the binaries, the build, the intermediate, and the saved folders do not need to be kept. With Unreal closed, Unreal Engine itself, not the launcher, we don't care about the launcher, but if the engine is closed, you can safely delete all 4 of those folders. I'm going to prove it. I'm going to do it while Visual Studio's fiddling around. Then I'm going to go back and reopen the Building Escape project. And watch what happens. The following modules are missing, these DLLs, Dynamic Link Libraries. Would you like to rebuild them? Yes, please. And as we start to rebuild them, it starts to put back in our intermediate, and you'll see it building other folders. So what are these folders? It's in your slides if you're ever not sure. Your derived folders in Unreal are binaries, build, derived data cache if you see it, intermediate, and saved. They're the folders we want to get rid of. For a full list, there's that link back to the directory structure that I showed you. Okay, so the other thing that happens and that we need to get rid of is these Visual Studio files. If I close Visual Studio now, you'll see that we have a database file that's 243 meg large. Now, the good thing about that is that if we reopen, sorry, I didn't mean to open Unreal then. If we reopen the Visual Studio solution that you're familiar with from the previous section, it opens very quickly and it's ready to go. The bad thing is it's taking up 243 meg. So this is another derived file. So this, in summary, is what you can delete, these guys. Okay, build, binaries, build, intermediate, saved, and this vc.db file. So how do we add this to version control and then ignore these files? I'm going to make that the subject of the next video. So if you're an expert on version control, then this is very simple for you. You just make a get ignore, ignoring these folders. If you're not, I'm going to do a quick primer video for those who aren't to show people how to ignore files when they need to. You don't have to get this absolutely right from the beginning, but we do want to make a good start so that we don't start tracking all these massive folders. Look, by the way, at the difference in size when we delete these folders. Let me take a look at the size of this folder now. 1.56 gig, all right? Let me go in, making sure that both the the Unreal Engine and Visual Studio are closed. We don't want to be deleting files when they're closed. Let's delete binaries, build, intermediate, and saved. I don't mind repeating myself on this because these are the things you want to start getting your eye for. And the Visual Studio database file. Now let's go back and see how big this folder is. Now it's only 621 meg, and remember that nearly all of that is under content, starter content, which is basically all of it. So actually our project is pretty much empty, which is what you'd expect because we haven't added any value yet. We haven't been in the Unreal Editor doing anything. A really good question to ask yourself is, have I really created that much data? Have I, sitting at the mouse and keyboard, really created hundreds of megabytes of data? And the answer is no. You haven't had time to make that much real data. There may be a load of derived data or data like this starter content, which we might want to exclude, which is available from elsewhere, but we haven't made anything yet. We haven't created any value. Therefore, there's nothing to store that we can't recreate later. I hope that point kind of comes across. If you're using a microphone like I am now, or a camera, or a video camera, then yes, you might be creating many megabytes of data. But if you're just sitting at a computer pushing buttons, you're generally not creating data that fast, or new meaning that fast. Okay? Hopefully that's got the point across for this video, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video where we'll actually set up our get ignore and be ready to start making a game.